On a gray March morning, sunlight pressed weakly through the worn curtains of the Carter house, laying pale streaks across the wooden floor. The air inside felt tight, heavy with tension that had already chosen its victim. Olivia Carter stood near the narrow window, her reflection faint in the cloudy glass. She was a black, plus-size woman, tall and full-figured, her body shaped by years of labor rather than leisure. Her hips were generous, her arms strong, her dark brown skin luminous even in the dull light. Thick curls were pulled back neatly at her nape, though a few soft strands framed her rounded cheeks. There was quiet dignity in the way she stood, shoulders steady, chin lifted just enough to keep from bowing. Behind her, Shirley wept. "I cannot marry a poor veteran in Wyoming," Shirley cried, her golden curls spilling over lace shoulders as she pressed a handkerchief to her face. "I will not live in some barren wilderness." Roy Carter stood rigid in the center of the room, fists braced against the table. "The dowry was accepted," he said, voice cold. "The promise was made." Margaret, Shirley's mother, and Olivia's stepmother sat nearby, pale and tense, her attention fixed solely on her own daughter. Olivia felt the familiar sting of invisibility, the way she had felt it since childhood, present yet never fully acknowledged. Shirley's sobs softened, then slowed. Her blue eyes flickered upward with calculation. "He has never seen me clearly," she said carefully. "The photograph was small, the image blurred. He only needs a Carter daughter." Silence fell. Olivia's breath stilled. "Let Olivia go instead." The words landed like a gavel strike. Olivia turned slowly from the window, her dark eyes wide but steady. "Father?" Roy did not hesitate. "You will go." She swallowed. "But the letters he wrote to Shirley." "The rancher will have a wife," Roy replied flatly, "and this family will keep its honor." Margaret finally spoke, though she did not look at Olivia. "It is for the best." For the best. Olivia felt the weight of years press against her chest, years of being called too dark, too broad, too plain beside Shirley's delicate beauty, years of hearing whispered names, bastard child, burden, replacement. Now she would quite literally become one. That night she climbed to the attic with the letters Shirley had left behind. The oil lamp flickered as she unfolded the neat handwriting of Walter Morgan. He wrote of Wyoming winds and long winters, of cattle and fences built by hand, of war scars and loneliness that lingered like an ache in the bones. "I do not seek an ornament. I seek a woman who will endure, one who stays when the land turns hard." Olivia's fingers trembled. Endure. She knew endurance. She had endured cold stares, back-breaking chores, and a lifetime of never being chosen first. She had endured shrinking herself to fit into corners of rooms that were never truly hers. For the first time, she wondered what it might feel like to be wanted for strength instead of appearance. But would he want her, this tall, full-figured black woman with roughened palms and a guarded heart, when he had expected someone else? The lamp flickered again, and Olivia pressed the letter to her chest. "If I go," she whispered into the stillness, "I will go as myself." Thursday morning arrived under a sky veiled in mist. The hired coach waited at the gate, wheels cutting into damp earth. Olivia stepped outside carrying a small wooden trunk. She wore her plain traveling dress, sturdy boots beneath the hem. Her curves filled the fabric confidently, though nerves trembled beneath her calm exterior. Margaret handed her a small cloth bundle of bread and apples. "For the journey." "Thank you," Olivia replied softly, though the word mother did not pass her lips this time. Roy did not come out to say farewell. From an upstairs window, Shirley watched, relief shining openly on her face. Olivia descended the steps without looking back. When she climbed into the stagecoach, the seat creaked beneath her weight. She placed the wooden trunk beside her and folded her hands in her lap. Her heart thudded heavily, not just with fear, but with something else.
Release. The town faded behind her as the horses lurched forward. Mud gave way to dry prairie roads. Fields stretched wide beneath clearing skies. She pressed her palm to the trunk where Walter's letters lay tucked safely inside. Ahead waited Wyoming, a stranger, a marriage born of deception. Yet for the first time in her life, the path unfolding before her belonged to her alone. The coach rattled westward, and Olivia Carter, sent as a substitute, underestimated, unchosen, lifted her chin toward the horizon. Whatever awaited her there, she would face it not as a shadow, but as herself.
The Cheyenne stage stop rose from the prairie like a rough sketch against the horizon. Weathered wooden buildings, a hitching rail, dust swirling in restless spirals beneath a pale afternoon sun. The stagecoach groaned to a halt. Olivia Carter remained seated for one steadying breath before rising. Days on the road had left her weary, but she refused to descend looking fragile. She adjusted her plain traveling dress, smoothing the fabric over her full hips and generous curves. Her dark skin glowed warmly beneath the light, and though the journey had tired her, there was strength in the way she held herself, upright, deliberate, dignified. The coach door swung open. She stepped down slowly, boots sinking into red dust. A murmur drifted through the small gathering of men and passengers. Some stared openly. A black, plus-size woman stepping off a mail-order bride coach was spectacle enough. Then she saw him. Walter Morgan stood several paces away, apart from the others. He was taller than she imagined, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, built solid like oak timber. His gray eyes were sharp beneath the brim of a worn hat, and his jaw carried the firm set of a man accustomed to command. He had expected someone else. She saw it immediately, the flicker of confusion tightening his gaze, the brief shadow of disappointment he did not quite mask. He stepped forward, boots heavy against dirt. "Your name?" he asked, voice low and roughened by prairie wind. "Olivia Carter," she replied, steady despite the dryness in her throat. Silence stretched between them. "The photograph," he said carefully, showed a fair-haired woman. Olivia felt the sting, but she did not lower her eyes. "That was my sister. I came in her place." A faint muscle moved in his jaw. "You understand that I wrote to her?" "Yes." "And that I was not informed of this change?" "Yes." The wind swept dust between them, lifting a loose curl near her cheek. "You may send me back," Olivia added quietly. "You have every right." For several long seconds, Walter said nothing. His gray eyes traveled over her, not in mockery, not in open rejection, but in assessment. He saw her strong arms, the fullness of her frame, the steadiness in her posture. He saw hands that were not ornamental, but capable. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. "Do you know what this land demands? Wyoming does not spare weakness." Olivia lifted her chin slightly. "I have survived in a house where I was never wanted. I believe I can survive land that at least does not lie." Something shifted in his gaze. Without another word, Walter stepped forward and lifted her wooden trunk as though it weighed nothing. He turned toward a waiting wagon. "Come," he said simply. The ride began in silence. Olivia sat upright on the wooden bench, her skirts gathered neatly. Walter held the reins with steady hands. The prairie stretched endlessly in gold and pale green waves. Mountains rested faint and blue against the horizon. After several minutes, Olivia spoke. "In your letters," she said carefully, "you described hardship, a small ranch, lean seasons." Walter did not look at her. "And if I had described abundance?" She considered. "You feared someone might come for the wrong reason." "Yes." His answer was blunt. "I have been desired for little, certainly not for wealth." His eyes flicked toward her then, quick, measuring. The wagon crested a gentle rise. Olivia's breath caught.
Below them stretched a vast ranch, long fences running like ribbons across open land, herds of cattle dotting hills, sturdy barns standing proud. At the center rose a large two-story house of timber and stone. This was no struggling homestead. This was prosperity. "You lied," she said quietly. "I concealed." "Why?" Walter's jaw tightened. "Because men with means attract women who love comfort more than companionship." The wagon rolled forward, descending toward the ranch yard. Workers moved about, tipping hats as Walter passed. Their eyes lingered briefly on Olivia, curiosity clear but restrained. Walter halted before the house and climbed down. He extended his hand upward. For a heartbeat, Olivia hesitated. Then she placed her palm in his. His grip was firm, warm, calloused. When her boots touched ground, she felt the weight of every gaze. Inside, the house surprised her even more. Polished wooden floors gleamed. A stone hearth dominated the parlor. Shelves of books lined one wall. Everything spoke of order and quiet wealth, not extravagance, but success earned. Walter set her trunk down. "You may have the room upstairs, end of the hall." Then, after a pause, "Supper is ready." In the kitchen, a pot of stew steamed gently. Fresh bread sat sliced on a wooden board. He gestured to the chair opposite his own. They ate in near silence. Olivia kept her movements composed, though nerves fluttered within her. She felt his eyes on her, not cruel, not cold now, but thoughtful. "You are not what I expected," she replied. "Neither are you." The corner of his mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. "I asked for someone who would endure, and I came prepared to stay." Their eyes met across the table. For the first time since stepping off the stagecoach, the tension eased, not entirely, but enough to allow something new to breathe between them. Not affection, not yet, but possibility. That night, Olivia stood at the window of her new room, moonlight silvering the pastures below. Walter stood on the porch, pipe glowing faintly in the dark. Two strangers bound by deception, two guarded hearts, yet neither had turned away. And somewhere in the quiet stretch of prairie night, the first fragile thread of something enduring began to form.
The first weeks at the Morgan Ranch unfolded with a rhythm that tested both body and will. Olivia rose before dawn each morning, long before the ranch hand stirred. Her plus-size frame moved confidently through the kitchen, hips steady beneath sturdy skirts, strong arms lifting cast-iron pans without strain. She was not delicate like the woman Walter had once expected. She was built for labor, broad-shouldered, full-figured, grounded. When she worked, there was no wasted motion. She baked bread from scratch, brewed thick coffee, and prepared hearty breakfasts that silenced even the most skeptical ranch hands. At first, they had watched her with curiosity, a black bride, a substitute, a woman softer in shape than frontier wives were rumored to be. By the second week, curiosity had shifted to respect. She hauled water when needed, she learned the layout of the barns, she brushed horses with calm authority, her hands steady and sure. Sweat darkened the back of her dresses beneath the Wyoming sun, but she did not complain. Walter observed. He never hovered, never offered unnecessary praise. He simply watched from the fence line or the porch, gray eyes measuring her endurance against the demands of the land. She did not falter. One late afternoon, dark clouds rolled over the prairie without warning. The air shifted, heavy and electric. Wind whipped through the grass, bending it low as though the earth itself were bowing. A storm was coming. Walter's voice cut through the rising gale. "Get the herd toward the lower barn." Ranch hands scrambled. Thunder cracked overhead. Olivia did not retreat to the house. She ran. Her skirt snapped wildly around her legs as she crossed the yard. Rain began in heavy sheets, soaking her dress within seconds. Mud clung to her boots, slowing her steps, but she pushed forward. In the cattle yard, panic had taken hold.
Steers slammed against wooden gates, eyes rolling white in terror. Walter braced his shoulder against a sagging barrier. "Hold it steady," he shouted. Without hesitation, Olivia threw her weight beside his. Her body, solid, powerful, pressed firmly against the wood. The gate shuddered beneath the force of a charging steer. A violent jolt knocked her sideways. Her boot slipped in the mud. Before she could fall, a strong arm wrapped around her waist. Walter pulled her upright in one swift motion, his grip iron strong against the curve of her hip. "I told you this land is dangerous, and I told you I would not run," she answered, rain streaming down her cheeks. Together, they forced the gate closed. Ranch hands secured the latches. The herd gradually settled as thunder rolled farther into the hills. By the time they reached the house, both were drenched and breathing hard. Walter slammed the door against the storm. Wind howled outside, rattling windows. Inside, the dim parlor flickered with lamplight. For a moment, neither spoke. Then laughter broke from them unexpectedly, raw, breathless relief spilling into the quiet room. It faded slowly. Walter's gaze lingered. Olivia's soaked dress clung to her full curves, outlining the strength of her body rather than hiding it. Water dripped from her curls onto her shoulders. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, breath unsteady but unbroken. He had seen her work. He had seen her endure. Now he truly saw her. She felt the weight of his stare and shifted slightly, self-conscious but unwilling to shrink. "I should change," she murmured. He nodded once, but did not look away immediately. Upstairs, Olivia closed her bedroom door and leaned against it. Her heart pounded, not from fear of the storm, but from the intensity in Walter's eyes. She peeled the damp fabric from her skin and wrapped herself in a thin shawl. The lamp cast a warm glow across her dark skin, highlighting every curve, every scar earned from years of hard living. A knock sounded softly. Her breath caught. "Olivia," Walter's voice came through the door. She hesitated only a moment before opening it. He stood there, still damp, shirt clinging to broad shoulders. His gray eyes no longer carried doubt. "I misjudged you," he said plainly. She met his gaze. "Many have. That was my failing, not yours." The wind roared outside, but inside the room, stillness gathered between them. "I wrote of poverty because I feared being wanted for wealth. I did not expect—" He paused. "Expect what?" she asked quietly. "Strength," he finished. "Not like this." Her lips curved faintly. "Strength does not always wear the shape people expect." A faint exhale escaped him, almost a laugh, almost admiration. Without thinking, she reached up and brushed rainwater from his cheek. Her fingers trembled at the contact. He did not pull away. Instead, his hand rose to her shoulder, large, calloused, warm. The touch was careful, not claiming, not forceful, testing. She did not retreat. Their first kiss was slow, tentative, no storm of passion, only two guarded souls lowering walls built from years of disappointment. When his lips pressed to hers again, deeper this time, something shifted irrevocably. The storm outside faded into background noise. In his arms, Olivia did not feel like a substitute. She felt chosen, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to lean fully into that truth.
Summer ripened the prairie into gold. By then, Olivia had settled into the rhythm of the Morgan Ranch as though she had been born to it. Her plus-size frame moved confidently across the yard, skirts swaying around strong hips, laughter sometimes rising freely when the wind caught her curls. She no longer hesitated under the eyes of ranch hands or neighboring wives. She had earned her place through work, steadiness, and quiet grace. Walter no longer watched her from a distance. He worked beside her.
He spoke her name without reservation. He touched her openly, brief brushes of his hand at her waist, fingers grazing hers when passing tools, subtle gestures that made no apology for affection. The ranch had begun to feel like home. Then the carriage arrived. It rolled into the yard in a cloud of dust one late afternoon, polished black and far too elegant for prairie roads. Ranch hands paused mid-task. Even the horses seemed to sense interruption. Olivia stepped out onto the porch, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. The carriage door opened. Shirley descended. She was dressed in pale blue silk trimmed with lace, gloves pristine, golden hair styled in careful waves. She looked every inch the woman who had once believed herself destined for wealth. Her eyes landed on the ranch house, on the barns, on the vast stretch of cattle beyond, and then on Olivia. "Sister," Shirley cried, voice trembling with theatrical emotion as she hurried forward. Olivia did not move from the porch steps. Shirley reached her and grasped her hands dramatically. "I was wrong. I was foolish. I let pride blind me." Her blue eyes shimmered with tears that did not quite reach their depths. Olivia remained composed. "What brings you here, Shirley?" Walter emerged from the stable at that moment, wiping his hands on a cloth. He halted several paces away, gray eyes narrowing slightly at the sight before him. Shirley turned toward him instantly, releasing Olivia's hands as though discarding something temporary. "Walter," she breathed, stepping closer to him instead, "I have thought of you every day." The ranch yard grew quiet. "You wrote such tender letters," Shirley continued, "about winter nights alone, about longing for a true companion. I was frightened then. I did not understand what I was giving up." Walter's face remained unreadable. Olivia felt a slow tightening in her chest, not jealousy, something more familiar, fear of being replaced, fear of never being enough. Shirley's gaze flickered back to Olivia briefly, sharp beneath the softness. Then she leaned closer to Walter, lowering her voice just enough to sting. "She tricked you," Shirley murmured. "She wanted your fortune. You must see that now." The accusation landed like a crack in dry wood. Olivia stiffened. Walter's eyes shifted toward her. For one suspended second, doubt flickered in his expression, not belief, not acceptance, but confusion. Shirley pressed forward, sensing weakness. "I was ill the week before I was to travel, and suddenly Olivia volunteered to take my place. Does that not seem convenient?" Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks, though her voice remained steady. "I volunteered because you refused." Shirley laughed lightly. "Oh, dear sister, always pretending to be noble." The ranch hands exchanged glances. Walter's jaw tightened. "I came," Shirley continued, "to correct a mistake. You deserve a wife suited to your station, not a stand-in." Silence settled thick across the yard. Olivia stood tall despite the tremor in her chest. She would not beg, she would not plead. If he chose Shirley now, she would walk away with her dignity intact. Walter stepped forward at last. "My station?" he repeated slowly. Shirley smiled faintly. "You are one of the wealthiest ranchers in this territory. You require refinement." Walter's gaze moved deliberately to Olivia. He took in the flour dusting her apron, the strong curve of her hips, the sun warming her dark skin, the steadiness in her eyes despite humiliation. "Refinement," he said quietly, "is not found in silk." Shirley blinked. Walter turned fully toward Olivia and mounted the porch steps. He stopped beside her, not in front of her, not shielding her, but standing shoulder to shoulder. "My wife," he said clearly. The word echoed. Olivia's breath caught. Shirley's face drained of color. "You cannot mean that." "I do," Walter replied, voice calm and final. "I chose her, not by accident, not by mistake." Shirley's composure cracked. "You'll regret this." Walter did not raise his voice. "Your visit is over." The dismissal was simple, decisive. Shirley's eyes flashed with fury. She turned sharply, skirts snapping in the wind, and climbed back into her carriage. The wheels thundered away in a cloud of dust. Silence lingered long after. Olivia stood still, heart pounding, relief mingled with something heavier, an ache from wounds reopened. Walter glanced at her. "You should have told me she would try something," he said quietly. "I feared you might believe her," she admitted. He studied her face carefully. "Do you know why I did not?" he asked. She shook her head. "Because I have seen you in a storm, and I know what stays." The tension in her chest loosened at last. As the sun dipped low over the prairie, casting everything in warm gold, Walter reached for her hand. This time there was no doubt, only choice.
Autumn brushed the prairie in amber and gold, and with it came a morning unlike any the Morgan Ranch had known before. The small white church at the edge of town stood dressed in wildflowers and simple ribbons. Wooden pews filled slowly with ranchers, merchants, neighbors, and curious onlookers who had once whispered about the black bride sent in her sister's place. Now they gathered not for gossip, but for a wedding. Inside a modest room behind the chapel doors, Olivia stood before a narrow mirror. She wore a gown sewn by careful hands, plain white cotton shaped to her full, elegant frame. The bodice fit snugly across her generous curves without apology. The skirt flowed in soft layers, honoring her strength rather than hiding it. A crown of prairie flowers rested gently against her dark curls, and her brown skin glowed warmly in the morning light. She did not look like a substitute. She looked like a bride. Her reflection showed not the uncertain woman who had stepped off a dusty stagecoach months earlier, but someone steadier, someone chosen. May, the housekeeper who had grown fond of her, adjusted the ham and smiled. "He looks at you like a man who has found water after drought." Olivia's lips trembled faintly, but she nodded. She did not trust her voice. The organ began to play. In the sanctuary, Walter Morgan stood tall at the altar. His gray suit was simple but well fitted, broad shoulders filling the frame with quiet authority. The lines in his weathered face softened as the chapel doors opened. All heads turned. Olivia entered alone. She walked steadily down the aisle, her full hips swaying gently beneath white fabric, her chin lifted. The room hushed, not from scandal this time, but from something like awe. Walter's gray eyes locked onto hers. There was no doubt in them, no hesitation, only certainty. When she reached him, he extended his hand. She placed her smaller, warm palm within his calloused grasp. His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, grounding them both. The minister's voice rose clear and steady. "In hardship and in harvest, in storm and in peace, do you promise to remain?" Walter answered first. "I do." No flourish, no hesitation. Olivia followed, her voice soft but firm. "I do." The vows were simple, unadorned by extravagance, like the life they had built together. When Walter leaned down to kiss her, it was tender, reverent, sealing something deeper than ceremony. Applause filled the chapel. Outside, tables lined with pies, roasted meats, and cider welcomed celebration. Children ran between adults' legs. Ranch hands laughed loudly. Even those who had once doubted now raised cups in approval. Walter stood beside Olivia proudly, one hand resting possessively, yet gently at the curve of her waist. "She is my wife," he said more than once, and each time Olivia felt the words settle into her bones. That evening, as the sun dipped red over the prairie, they returned to the ranch alone. The porch, once witness to uncertainty and confrontation, now felt sacred.
Walter lit his pipe, the faint ember glowing in twilight. Olivia sat beside him, her wedding gown exchanged for a soft blue dress he had once chosen for her in town, the color deep against her dark skin. "You remember the first day?" he asked quietly. "The dust, the way you looked at me. I was a fool. You were cautious." He shook his head slightly. "I thought I was choosing a bride. I did not realize I was being given a partner." Silence stretched comfortably between them. Wind moved gently through tall grass. Cattle lowed in the distance. "I spent years fearing I would never be chosen," Olivia admitted. "Even after you said the word wife, a part of me still expected to lose it." Walter turned fully toward her. "You will never be replaced, not in this house, not in this life." He pulled her closer, her full body fitting naturally against his broad chest. There was no awkwardness in their size difference, only balance. His strength and her solidity meeting like two pillars holding the same roof. Months turned into seasons. Spring returned. In a clear morning filled with bird song, a newborn's cry echoed through the ranch house. Walter stood beside the bed, large hands trembling as he touched the tiny fingers of his son. Olivia cradled the child against her chest, tears shining down her cheeks. "Thomas," Walter whispered, voice thick with awe. The years that followed carried both labor and laughter. The ranch prospered further under Walter's steady leadership and Olivia's warm guidance. She became the heart of the homestead, feeding workers, teaching children letters by lantern light, tending to the sick with gentle authority. Soon a daughter joined them, Ella, with gray eyes like her father and warm brown skin like her mother. Neighbors stopped whispering about the substitute bride. They began saying something else instead. She was the right one. 5 years after the wedding, the Morgan Ranch stood among the wealthiest spreads in the territory, but its greatest treasure was not cattle or land. It was the porch at sunset. One golden evening, Olivia sat with Ella in her lap while Thomas practiced roping tricks nearby. Walter lowered himself beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "You've come far," he murmured. "So have you." The horizon burned red and gold, the same sky she had once ridden beneath in fear. Now it stretched before her in promise. Olivia rested her head against Walter's shoulder, her full body warm and secure in his embrace. She had not been sent away, she had been sent forward. And in the arms of a wealthy white cowboy who chose her, not once, but every day, Olivia knew she was no longer the daughter no one wanted. She was the woman chosen forever.